Okay. So first off, thank you for letting me come in and watch you work with your student the other day. I just want to start off by saying the purpose of our conversation today is kind of just to get a learning process going for both of us. For me, I want to know how I can support you in the classroom and elevating what you currently do. And for you, I hope you kind of walk away with strategies to implement and ways to kind of work with your students within your classroom. So thinking back to the lesson from last week, how successful do you think the lesson went, and how do you think, how did the lesson go?
I think overall it went well. We accomplished everything that I had laid out for us to do. He's getting better with his attention and his engagement in the lessons. It's not great, but it's getting better. So I think overall it was successful.
Okay. I noticed that your classroom was really set up for your student. He had a lot of different things within your room. Can you describe those elements and how you think they contributed to the success of your lesson?
Well, especially for this student, but for most of my students, it's always beneficial to have them in close proximity so I can have, a close hands-on experience if I need to. I try to keep all of my materials close so they're not doing any waiting around and I can just grab what I need. They get flexible seating. The board is up close so I don't have to worry about them getting distracted by too many things from, a visual perspective.
I did really like how organized everything was. You're able to easily transition each of your things by taking out his folder and getting ready. And so there wasn't a time for him to kind of get too distracted by other things because you were right on top of it, ready for him to go. So thinking about the lesson as well, what are some of those positive highlights for you during that lesson?
Well, there are a lot of things that he's been working on, but I think one of the things that I was very happy to see him do was at one point he was reading and they were all about ocean animals and he called something a dolphin. And as he looked at the text, he actually corrected himself to say it was a whale because, and when asked about it, he pointed to the W for the whale. So he was starting to use those beginning sounds.
And he was starting to self-correct, which is a new thing for him.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Did you have to make any adjustments to your lesson plan that we talked about during the pre-observation? And then why did you find those changes to be necessary?
Well, what we do is I have him work on breaking words apart. And
Okay.
At one point he said, can we try goat? And so I actually changed some of the words that I was planning on using and some of the medial sounds, which we've been working on those short vowel sounds. We ended up doing goat and sheep because he, at that point, was kind of focused on the animals. So I tried to stick with things that he would be more engaged with.
Okay. And what's really cool is those words that he actually pointed out would be more complex than what he would typically be able to accomplish because you noticed that that was something he was engaged in. He was ready to kind of work with those. Anything that you feel like maybe did not go well or didn't go as you planned?
He always comes right after quiet time and he always has something in his hands. And it doesn't usually provide much of a distraction for him. Usually it pushes it to the side and just leaves it there. More often than not, it's something that he made for me and he's going to give to me. So he kind of pushes it to the side. But in this case, he kept playing with it. And so I had to finally take it away from him, which, he wasn't terribly happy. He was fine, but it
Wasn't his favorite thing.
wasn't his favorite thing.
Okay. So as I was watching the lesson and then rewatching the video clip, I noticed a lot of really amazing strategies already being implemented for him. He feels super safe and comfortable in your room. You were able to cue him like visually using hand motions and also verbally. And he responded to those cues without any type of argument. He has a sense of routine when he comes into your room. He knows exactly what's expected of him. And everything that he needs is right where he needs it to be. So I saw a lot of really great strategies that are contributing to his overall success in your room. One other thing I did notice is you were using visual cues to kind of meet his needs. So I saw you doing like the hand motions. How do you think you can further develop this practice to continue to meet his needs in the future?
Well, as we get into more complicated lessons and actually writing things down, more complicated sounds, I'm going to need more visual cues, more, first thens, more, I need you to listen, now repeat, now right. So we'll have more visual cues on the table for him as we start to create a more complex lesson.
Okay, I think that's a wonderful idea to kind of bring that to him so that he's able to kind of self-regulate. Do you think that that would be something he'd be able to take back to his gen ed classroom as well to kind of continue to use?
In some instances, he could.
Okay.
Yes. He's actually in the gen ed classroom. He's more kind of a spacey sort of student. He's not as much of a mover. Like in my room, he needs like the rocker and stuff because he's constantly moving. But when he gets into that larger environment, he's still trying to get used to being a student, and so he
Okay.
kind of is very
Quiet.
and
Okay.
contained in his area, and he's still very confused by a lot of the things the teacher's asking him to do at this point. So
Okay. And I think all the movement, everything kind of adds to how comfortable he is in your room, which is a really good thing for him. So as you're moving in, you mentioned you're going to start adding more rigor into the lessons. And I already did see a lot of rigor in with what he was doing. It's a very fast paced moving lesson, a lot of short little mini lessons going. Do you think the picture cues are going to add to the rigor as well?
I hope so.
Okay.
I hope it keeps him on a track. He is really good once he knows a routine, though. Like I don't see those needing to be a
Long-term.
support for long. Yes,
Okay.
once he gets into the routine, he likes to follow his routine.
Okay. So after you got an opportunity to watch the video, after you viewed the video, what was some evidence of learning that you saw from the student?
Well, I think using that first sound,
Okay.
seeing him actually like use that first sound was nice to see. And then just, we had to really work on what's the beginning of the sentence, what's the end of the sentence. But by the end of the book, he was able to start pointing out, oh, the punctuation is the end of the sentence. So he's starting to pick up on some of those once you practice it.
I did notice you were he was having a miscue almost, where he thought the end of a line was actually the end of a sentence. And by the end of the lesson, like you said, he did realize that, oh, I need to look exactly for the punctuation, not just for the end of the line on the page. So that was a really great on the spot mini lesson for him. So one of your California standards for teaching practices goals was to create a rigorous learning environment with high expectations. How do you feel like you implemented the goal during this lesson?
Well, I think, like you said, I tried to incorporate a lot of little tiny pieces
Mhm.
that I try to keep him moving with a lot of different activities. So
Okay.
we don't have a lot of opportunity to kind of slow down, or get him distracted, but it gives us the opportunity to get in a lot of information
Okay.
and try to tie it all together. So, we were able to tie in words go with pictures and write the book, but also use the picture to help you read the book. We've been working a lot on don't change the words because the author wrote that. So when he writes his book, he starts to learn that he doesn't want somebody changing his words. So then he's been attending better to the words in the book, using the first sounds, just a lot of little things that we then can incorporate into that book at the end.
I also saw you were incorporating some math into the lesson because he is working on concept of words. So it was a lot of counting words, but then you transition to more practice of counting with him counting animals in the pictures and everything like that as well. So I thought that was a great little lesson to add to the rigor because he needs math support too. Your second goal that you would like to focus on is knowledge of student development to ensure their understanding. How do you think you implemented this goal during the lesson?
Well, I know that he really needs that structure and the routine, and that's kind of what he thrives on. You heard it, that as soon as a bell rings, he's like, oh, I heard the first bell. Oh, I heard the second bell. Like that's kind of how he paces himself through a lesson. And just that repetitive practice, giving him that practice over and over again until he feels comfortable with the skill.
Okay, perfect. If you're thinking, if you could go back in time and, do this lesson over, would you do things differently or do you think you would keep it the same?
Well, I would definitely take away the sticky hand at the
Yeah.
beginning and get that distraction out of the way. I think overall the lesson did go well. And so I wouldn't change the elements of the lesson. He still needs those elements. So.
No, I completely agree. So what have you kind of taken away from this experience, getting to kind of watch a lesson that you got to do? What is something you're taking away from that?
Well, I don't think one thing I didn't really realize he was doing, like I think it in the back of your head, but at the beginning of the reading, he would start with the first 3 words that he was really comfortable with. And on every page he had to say them and then go back and say them again before he would finish the sentence. And so it's building on that pattern, but how do I make him feel more comfortable that he doesn't have to go back and repeat that? It's like the student who's not conserving the number yet.
Yeah.
And so just kind of helping him move through that phase
Mhm.
of the reading, because on every single page he went back and repeated those first 3 words.
And it's almost like he's reading the first time to decode. So he's
Mhm.
getting through that first one, decode it, and then he decodes it and he goes back again because he's so interested in what he's reading to comprehend it. And so that's going to be a really important skill as he's getting older too, because he's already going, he wants to comprehend these
Yes, he
texts.
does.
So I think that's something that's going to be very good to kind of keep in mind. He has this love for reading. He's going to be able to move through those books as well. So thinking about the experience and kind of some of the things we've talked about, we want to kind of build in the pattern making. So how can we find more ways to build patterns into books? And we also want to kind of look at how can we, some of the behaviors, how can we encourage him to follow the structure of your day? Are there any resources that you can think of that you need from me in order to kind of make that happen?
I don't know that I need resources right now. I'm going to be doing we have the opportunity to do a UDL cohort that's starting.
Okay.
And, with the additional practicing on those patterns, if we have more resources for actual patterned books,
Okay.
that might be helpful. Right now, our resources are a little bit limited on those patterned books
Okay.
that are of a high interest in reading.
So that's definitely something to look into, the high interest pattern books, and even looking into how can he code his text as he's moving into more complex books. Can he do things like highlight, and would a tracker work for him as well, so that he's following along with the words in the text as he's building his skills? So do you have any feedback for how you have felt this process has gone? Do you think this has been helpful or ineffective for you?
Well, I was a little hesitant at first because I don't like being videotaped, but actually I think it's helpful because I don't get videotaped. And so when you go into observations, you don't know what your lesson actually looked like from kind of that bird's eye point of view.
Right.
So it was interesting to see how much he was moving, because I only see his upper body, and to see his feet going and the rocker moving, and to see him get slightly like turn and look at you, or just the little distractions that he has that you kind of know are happening while you're teaching, and you just kind of pull in and then move through. But also that like repetition of the beginning of the book, and things that you might like pop in the back of your head, but you don't stop and like really think about until you see it.
Yeah. No, the movement I think was really great. Seeing him just feel so comfortable and move, but also it didn't phase you. Like sometimes people will, try to correct that movement. But for him, like he needs that, and you recognize that he needs that and allow it. So that's amazing. You mentioned the UDL group, and that's going to be a literacy-based group.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so that will kind of it'll fall under professional development action for you. Are there any other professional development actions that you plan to take to support these goals, or that you have in mind?
At this time, I don't have any that are lined up.
Okay.
I do keep my eye out on things that come out from the district.
Okay.
But other than our normal PD days, I don't have anything at this time.
Okay. So I think a couple of things, just to kind of go back, a couple of things that we need to look into are how can we find some high interest texts for him that follow more of a pattern that he would be able to engage with, making sure that you have the time that you need for the UDL group that you're going to participate in, and then looking into planning visual cues for the rigor that's coming for him now that he's starting to gain all these skills and put everything together. Is there anything else that you need? Okay, well, I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for letting me come in and watch you teach.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No.